Commander Sarah Mitchell stood at attention in the pristine conference room of Naval Special Warfare Command, her steel blue eyes fixed on the American flag hanging behind the podium. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table where a dozen senior officers sat in crisp white uniforms. At 28, she was the youngest officer in the room and certainly the only woman among the sea of decorated veterans. Admiral James Bulldog Harrison entered the room with his characteristic swagger, his chest heavy with ribbons and medals accumulated over 3 decades of service. His weathered face bore the marks of countless missions in hostile waters, and his reputation as a no-nonsense leader preceded him wherever he went. The room fell silent as he took his position at the head of the table, his penetrating gaze sweeping across each officer before settling on Sarah.
"Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Harrison began, his gravelly voice filling the room. "Today we're discussing the integration of our newest SEAL Team commanders into Operation Neptune's Trident." His eyes lingered on Sarah with what she recognized as barely concealed skepticism. "Commander Mitchell here has been assigned the call sign Iron Widow by her previous unit." A few officers exchanged glances, some suppressing smirks at the unusual designation.
Sarah remained motionless, her expression neutral despite the familiar sting of being singled out. She had heard the whispers before, the speculation about how she had earned such an ominous call sign, and the assumption that it was somehow related to her personal life rather than her professional capabilities. Admiral Harrison leaned back in his chair, a condescending smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Iron Widow," he repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "Quite dramatic, wouldn't you say? I'm curious, Commander, did you choose this call sign yourself, or was it bestowed upon you by your teammates?" The question dripped with sarcasm, drawing a few chuckles from around the table. Sarah's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but her voice remained steady and professional.
"Admiral, the call sign was assigned by my unit based on operational performance and leadership characteristics.
I didn't request it, nor did I object to it."
Operational performance, Harrison mused, picking up Sarah's file from the table.
"Yes, I see here you've had quite the career trajectory. Fast-tracked through officer candidate school, distinguished service in Afghanistan, multiple commendations for tactical excellence."
He paused dramatically, looking up from the papers. "But tell me, Commander, how does one earn a call sign that sounds more suited to a comic book villain than a naval officer?"
The room grew uncomfortably quiet.
Sarah could feel the weight of every gaze upon her, measuring her response. She had faced this moment countless times before, in different rooms with different faces. But the underlying challenge remained the same. Her worth was constantly being questioned, her abilities scrutinized through a lens that her male counterparts would never experience. "Sir, my previous commanding officer, Captain Rodriguez, assigned the call sign after our unit successfully completed a series of high-risk extractions in hostile territory." Sarah replied evenly.
The iron represents unwavering determination under pressure, and Widow refers to the fact that I've never lost a team member under my command. Every mission has brought everyone home safely.
Admiral Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly, though his skeptical expression remained unchanged.
Interesting interpretation. And how many missions would that be exactly? 47 combat operations over the past 6 years, sir?
0 casualties among personnel under my direct command. The number hung in the air like a challenge. Several officers around the table shifted in their seats, recognizing the significance of such a record. Even in the elite world of special operations, maintaining a perfect safety record while completing high-stakes missions was virtually unheard of. But Admiral Harrison wasn't impressed, or at least he wasn't willing to show it. 47 missions, he repeated thoughtfully. "Impressive on paper, I'll grant you that. But statistics can be deceiving, can't they? Perhaps you've been fortunate with your assignments. Perhaps your superiors have been protective of their investment." The implication was clear, and Sarah felt the familiar fire ignite in her chest. The suggestion that she had been given easy assignments or special treatment was one she had encountered throughout her career, a persistent shadow that followed every achievement. It was the price of breaking barriers in a traditionally male-dominated field. "Admiral, with respect, my mission records are available for your review. The difficulty ratings and strategic importance of each operation are clearly documented. I can assure you that my teams have faced the same level of risk and complexity as any other unit in our command." Harrison waved dismissively. Of course! I'm sure everything is well documented." He stood and began pacing behind his chair, his hands clasped behind his back. "But documentation doesn't tell the whole story, does it? It doesn't capture the intangibles, the gut instincts, the split-second decisions that separate good commanders from great ones. He stopped pacing and fixed Sarah with an intense stare. You see, Commander Mitchell, leading a SEAL team isn't just about following protocols and checking boxes.
It's about earning the absolute trust and confidence of warriors who put their lives in your hands every time they step into the field. These men need to believe, without question, that their leader will make the right call when everything goes to hell. Sarah nodded respectfully.
I understand completely, Admiral. Building that trust is the foundation of effective leadership.
Good, Harrison said, returning to his seat. Then you won't mind proving it? He opened another folder and spread several photographs across the table. Operation Blackwater. 3 American contractors captured by insurgents in the Helmand province. Intelligence suggests they're being held in a heavily fortified compound approximately 20 kilometers north of Lashkar Gah. Sarah leaned forward to examine the photographs, her tactical mind immediately analyzing the terrain and structural details. The compound was indeed formidable, surrounded by high walls and positioned on elevated ground that provided clear sightlines in all directions. Guard towers were strategically placed, and the single-access road would make any conventional approach extremely dangerous. The mission parameters are straightforward, Admiral Harrison continued. Infiltrate the compound, extract the hostages, and neutralize any threats that prevent successful completion of the objective. You'll have a 6-man team, standard equipment loadout, and helicopter support for insertion and extraction. As Sarah studied the intelligence photos, she noticed several details that immediately raised red flags. The compound's defensive positions were textbook perfect, almost too perfect. The placement of guard towers suggested someone with advanced military training had designed the layout. Most concerning was the apparent lack of civilian presence in the surrounding area, which was unusual for the region. Admiral, may I ask about the intelligence sources for this operation? Some aspects of the target seem unusual. Harrison's expression hardened slightly. The intelligence is solid, Commander. Are you questioning the competency of our analysts? Not at all, sir. I'm simply conducting the standard threat assessment that any responsible commander would perform before deploying their team into hostile territory.
Of course you are, Harrison said with a thin smile.
How thorough of you. But I'm afraid time is a critical factor here. The contractors have been in captivity for 72 hours, and intelligence suggests their captors are planning to move them to a secondary location within the next 24 hours.
If we don't act quickly, we may lose them entirely.
Sarah felt the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. The lives of 3 American citizens hung in the balance, and delay could mean death. But something about the entire situation felt wrong, like a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit together properly.
When do we deploy, sir? Wheels up in 6 hours.
Your team is already being briefed and equipped. I trust that gives you sufficient time to prepare?
There was an edge to Harrison's voice, as if he were hoping she would back down or ask for more time. More than sufficient, Admiral.
My team and I will be ready. Harrison stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Excellent. Oh, and Commander? He paused at the door, turning back with that same condescending smile. Try not to let that dramatic call sign go to your head. This is real warfare, not a Hollywood movie. As the room emptied, Sarah remained seated for a moment, staring at the intelligence photograph spread before her. Something was definitely wrong with this mission, but she couldn't put her finger on exactly what. The timeline was compressed, the intelligence seemed too convenient, and Admiral Harrison's attitude suggested this was more than just another rescue operation. She gathered the photos and headed toward the door, her mind already shifting into mission planning mode. Whatever game Admiral Harrison was playing, she would be ready for it. Her team's lives depended on it, and she had never lost a team member yet. She wasn't about to start now. The hallway outside the conference room buzzed with activity as personnel hurried past, carrying out the countless tasks that kept the naval base running smoothly. Sarah walked purposefully toward the team briefing room, where 6 of the finest special operations soldiers in the world were waiting for her leadership. Staff Sergeant Mike Brick Thompson looked up as she entered. At 35, he was the team's senior enlisted man and had served with distinction in Iraq, Afghanistan, and numerous classified operations around the globe. His massive frame and calm demeanor had earned him the respect of every soldier he had served alongside. "Morning, Commander," Brick said, rising from his chair. "We've been reviewing the preliminary briefing materials. Looks like we're going hunting." The other team members turned to face their commander, Petty Officer First Class David Ghost Martinez, the team's reconnaissance specialist whose ability to move unseen had saved countless lives. Petty Officer Second Class James Doc Williams, their medic whose steady hands had patched up more wounded warriors than he cared to remember. Petty Officer Third Class Ryan Shark Davis, an explosives expert with an uncanny ability to find creative solutions to complex problems. Petty Officer Third Class Alex Phoenix Johnson,
their communications specialist who could establish contact with headquarters from virtually anywhere on Earth. And finally, Petty Officer 3rd Class Mark Viper Anderson, a sniper whose precision shooting had turned the tide of numerous engagements. These men had been hand-selected for this team, and Sarah had worked with most of them on previous operations. They were professionals in every sense of the word, and she trusted each of them with her life. Now she needed them to trust her with theirs.
Gentlemen, Sarah began, spreading the intelligence photos on the briefing table. We have a hostage rescue mission in Afghanistan. 3 American contractors are being held in this compound near Lashkar-Gah. The operation is time-sensitive, and we deploy in 5.5 hours.
The team gathered around the table, each man instinctively analyzing the target from his area of expertise. Sarah watched their faces, noting the subtle frowns and concerned glances they exchanged as they studied the photographs. "Commander," Ghost said quietly, "this place looks like Fort Knox. The defensive positioning is almost perfect. Whoever set this up knows what they're doing." "I noticed that too," Sarah replied. "Which is why we're going to assume this is a trap and plan accordingly." Admiral Harrison's challenge was clear now. He had given her an impossible mission, expecting her to fail and prove that women didn't belong in Special Operations Command. The Iron Widow call sign was just his way of mocking what he saw as pretentious nonsense. He wanted her to fail publicly and dramatically, ending her career and sending a message to any other woman who might dare to follow in her footsteps. But Sarah Mitchell had not survived 6 years of combat operations by backing down from challenges or accepting defeat as inevitable.
If Admiral Harrison wanted to test the Iron Widow, she would give him a demonstration he would never forget. Sarah spent the next 3 hours in intensive mission planning with her team, every minute dedicated to analyzing potential approaches to the compound and identifying weaknesses in what appeared to be an impenetrable fortress.
The briefing room walls were covered with satellite imagery, topographical maps, and detailed floor plans obtained through various intelligence sources. "The main gate is obviously a no-go," Brick said, pointing to the heavily reinforced entrance. "They've got overlapping fields of fire from both guard towers, and the approach road offers zero concealment for the last 200 meters. Doc traced his finger along the perimeter wall. "What about the eastern wall?" "It's further from the guard towers, and there's some vegetation that might provide limited cover."
"Still too exposed," Shark interjected. "Besides, look at the ground composition in that area.
"It's all rocky terrain. One loose stone and the whole compound knows we're coming." Sarah studied the imagery through a magnifying glass, searching for something everyone else had missed. The compound's designers had clearly anticipated every conventional approach, but no defensive position was truly perfect. There was always a weakness, always an angle that hadn't been fully considered. "What about the water supply?" she asked suddenly.
Every compound needs fresh water, especially one housing multiple prisoners and guards. Phoenix pulled up the infrastructure analysis on his laptop. "There's a well system here," he said, highlighting a small structure near the compound's center.
"Looks like it connects to an underground aquifer that runs beneath the entire area." "And where does that aquifer originate?" Sarah pressed.
Phoenix's fingers flew across the keyboard as he accessed geological survey data.
"According to this, the main water source is a mountain spring approximately 3 kilometers to the northwest. The underground flow follows this natural channel."
A red line appeared on the satellite image showing the water's path from the mountain spring directly beneath the compound. Sarah smiled for the first time since the briefing began.
"Gentlemen, I think we've found our back door." The plan that emerged over the next hour was audacious and dangerous, requiring precise timing and flawless execution. Instead of attacking the compound directly, they would follow the underground water channel and emerge inside the perimeter through the well system.
It would require advanced diving equipment and the ability to navigate through underwater caves in complete darkness, but it offered the element of surprise that conventional approaches lacked.
"Commander," Viper said cautiously, "this is going to require some serious cave diving skills."
"If anyone gets disoriented down there or if the passage is smaller than we think, I know the risks," Sarah replied. "That's why I'm going in first. If the passage is navigable, I'll establish a guideline for the rest of the team. If it's not, we abort and find another way." Brick shook his head. "With respect, ma'am, you're not going anywhere alone. If this tunnel system is as complex as it appears, we need someone who can get back out to report if things go bad."
"I'll take point on this one." "Negative?"
"I'm the team leader, and I won't ask anyone to take a risk I'm not willing to take myself." The debate continued for several minutes, with each team member arguing for why they should be the one to test the underwater passage. Finally, Sarah held up her hand for silence.
"Here's how it's going to work.
Ghost and I will make the initial reconnaissance. His stealth skills make him the logical choice for scouting, and my command responsibility means I need to personally assess the viability of the approach. If we encounter problems, Ghost can navigate back while I maintain position to guide the extraction. It wasn't a perfect compromise, but it was one everyone could live with. The team spent the remaining time reviewing contingency plans, establishing communication protocols, and conducting equipment checks. Each man verified his gear multiple times, knowing that a single equipment failure could doom the entire mission. As they prepared to depart for the airfield, Sarah noticed Admiral Harrison observing from the corridor outside the briefing room. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the team's preparations with an expression of smug anticipation. He clearly expected this mission to be her downfall, and he wanted to witness the moment when the Iron Widow finally met her match. Admiral, is there anything else you need to tell me about this mission? Any intelligence updates or tactical considerations I should be aware of? Harrison's smile was cold and calculating. No, Commander. You have everything you need. I'm sure you'll perform exactly as expected. The dismissive tone was unmistakable, but Sarah simply nodded professionally.
Thank you, sir.
We'll have those hostages back within 24 hours. I certainly hope so for their sake, and for yours. The helicopter ride to the insertion point took 4 hours, during which the team conducted final equipment checks and reviewed the mission timeline one last time. Sarah sat quietly in the corner, her mind focused on the dozens of variables that could affect the operation's success. Weather conditions were favorable, with minimal moonlight providing natural concealment. Intelligence reports suggested the guards followed predictable patrol patterns, creating windows of opportunity for infiltration. But something still bothered her about the entire situation. The timing was too convenient, the intelligence too detailed, and Admiral Harrison's attitude too confident for someone sending troops into a genuinely dangerous situation. It felt like a setup, but she couldn't determine the exact nature of the trap.
2 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced over the intercom.
Sarah's team stood and conducted final gear checks. Each man carried specialized equipment for the underwater infiltration: rebreathers, underwater navigation devices, waterproof weapons, and emergency flotation gear. The total weight of their equipment exceeded standard mission loadouts, but the unique nature of their approach demanded specialized tools. Remember, Sarah said as they prepared to fast rope to the ground, we're assuming this is a trap until proven otherwise. Trust your instincts, watch each other's backs, and nobody takes unnecessary risks. We're all going home tonight. The helicopter hovered 30 feet above a small clearing approximately 5 kilometers from the target compound. One by one, the team members rappelled down thick ropes into the darkness below, disappearing into the rugged Afghan terrain like ghosts. Sarah went last, taking one final look at the compound's distant lights before sliding down into the night. The mountain spring that fed the underground aquifer was exactly where the geological surveys had indicated, a natural pool of crystal-clear water nestled among granite boulders. The team established a security perimeter while Sarah and Ghost prepared for the underwater reconnaissance. Current temperature is 52 degrees, Doc reported, checking his instruments. Water clarity appears excellent. Visibility should be good for the first 50 meters at least. Sarah adjusted her rebreather and activated the waterproof navigation system. Ghost, you ready for a swim? Always wanted to see Afghanistan from below ground level, he replied with a grin. They entered the water slowly, allowing their bodies to adjust to the cold temperature while testing their equipment one final time. The underground passage was larger than they had hoped, with a steady current that would assist their movement toward the compound. Phosphorescent markers left behind would help guide the rest of the team during the main infiltration. As they swam deeper into the mountain, Sarah marveled at the natural beauty of the underground cave system. Limestone formations created cathedral-like chambers filled with impossibly clear water, while schools of blind fish moved through the darkness like living shadows. It was a hidden world that few humans had ever seen, a reminder that even in the midst of war, natural wonders continued to exist. The passage narrowed significantly after the first kilometer, forcing them to swim single file through tight corridors barely wide enough for their equipment. Sarah's claustrophobia training kicked in as the walls closed around them, but she pushed forward steadily, following the navigation system's guidance toward their objective. After what felt like hours but was actually 45 minutes, a faint glow appeared ahead. Sarah signaled for Ghost to maintain position while she investigated the light source. Swimming upward through a natural chimney in the rock, she found herself looking up through an iron grate into what appeared to be the compound's well house. Perfect! The intelligence had been accurate about the water system, at least. Sarah carefully examined the grate's mounting system, noting that it was secured with simple bolts rather than welded in place. With the right tools, they could remove it silently and gain access to the compound's interior. The well house itself appeared to be unguarded, probably considered too secure to require constant surveillance. She swam back to Ghost and gave him the thumbs-up signal. They had found their entrance. The return journey to the mountain spring took slightly longer as they were swimming against the current and leaving detailed navigation markers for the rest of the team. By the time they surfaced, Sarah was confident that the infiltration route was viable and offered their best chance of reaching the hostages undetected. "It's doable," she reported to the team. "The passage is tight in a few places but navigable with standard diving gear. The well house is unguarded, and we should be able to access the main compound without detection."
Brick nodded approvingly.
How long for the full team to make the transit? 90 minutes, assuming no complications. That puts us inside the compound at approximately 0200 hours, which coincides with the guard shift change intelligence identified.
Phoenix checked his communication equipment one final time. I'll maintain radio contact with headquarters until we enter the water.
After that, we're on our own until extraction. Sarah looked at each team member, seeing the quiet confidence that came from working with professionals who trusted each other completely. These men would follow her into hell if she asked them to, and tonight she was asking them to do exactly that.
Final equipment check, then we move out.
Remember, this is a rescue mission. The hostages are our primary concern, but our secondary objective is getting everyone home safely. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We do this by the book. As the team prepared for the underwater infiltration, Sarah noticed movement on the horizon. A vehicle convoy was approaching the compound from the south, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searching fingers. She pulled out her binoculars and counted at least 6 vehicles, more than would be expected for a routine supply run.
Phoenix, get me eyes on that convoy.
I want to know who's joining the party. The communications specialist set up his surveillance equipment and focused on the approaching vehicles. After several minutes of observation, he lowered his scope with a troubled expression.
"Commander, those aren't supply trucks."
"That's a full tactical unit, at least 30 armed men in military-style vehicles. They're setting up what looks like additional security around the compound." Sarah felt the pieces of Admiral Harrison's trap beginning to fall into place. The compressed timeline, the detailed intelligence, the perfect defensive positioning. It was all designed to draw her into a killing zone where superior numbers would overwhelm her small team. But Harrison had made one critical error. He had underestimated exactly what the Iron Widow was capable of when properly motivated. "Change of plans," she announced to her team. "We're not just rescuing hostages tonight. We're sending Admiral Harrison a message he'll never forget." The underwater infiltration proceeded flawlessly, with each team member following the phosphorescent markers Sarah and Ghost had placed during their reconnaissance. The mountain spring's icy water was a shock to the system, but their specialized equipment maintained body temperature and provided adequate breathing capability for the 90-minute journey through the underground cave system. Sarah led the formation through the tightest passages, her navigation system guiding them through the labyrinthine network of limestone corridors. Behind her, Ghost maintained perfect position, followed by Brick, Doc, Shark, Phoenix, and Viper in precise formation. Each man carried waterproof versions of his specialized equipment, adding significant weight but ensuring mission capability once they reached the target. As they approached the final ascent to the compound's well house, Sarah signaled for the team to hold position while she confirmed their insertion point remained uncompromised. Swimming upward through the natural chimney, she observed the iron grate above and listened carefully for any indication of guard presence. Silence. Using specialized tools, she carefully loosened the bolts securing the grate, working slowly to avoid creating noise that might alert nearby guards. The metal framework lifted away smoothly, revealing the dark interior of the well house. Sarah hauled herself up into the small structure, water streaming from her equipment, as she immediately took defensive position near the single door. One by one, her team members emerged from the underground passage like deadly spirits rising from the depths. Within 10 minutes, all 6 men stood ready in the cramped well house, weapons prepared and communication systems activated for the final phase of their mission. "Phoenix, what's our status on that additional security?" Sarah whispered into her throat microphone.
Thermal imaging shows approximately 40 personnel now stationed around the compound.
They've established overlapping patrol routes and positioned marksmen in the guard towers.
Someone definitely knew we were coming. Sarah's suspicions about Admiral Harrison's true intentions were confirmed. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was an elaborate execution designed to eliminate the Iron Widow and her team, while providing plausible deniability for the Admiral's actions.
The 3 American contractors were probably fictional, created to justify sending her into a carefully prepared kill zone.
But Harrison had made a fatal error in his calculations. He had assumed that Sarah would follow conventional tactical doctrine and attempt a straightforward assault on the compound's defenses. Instead, she was now positioned inside the perimeter with complete surprise, holding every tactical advantage while her enemies waited for an attack that would never come from the direction they expected. "New mission parameters?" she announced to her team. "Hostage rescue is secondary. Primary objective is now neutralizing the threat and ensuring our extraction. We're dealing with a setup, and I want everyone to understand that this compound is designed to be a trap." Brick's expression darkened as the implications became clear.
I am going up and,
"How do you want to play this, Commander?" Sarah studied the compound layout through the well house's small window. The additional security forces had positioned themselves to repel an external assault, creating a defensive perimeter that faced outward while leaving their rear areas relatively unprotected. It was exactly the kind of tactical tunnel vision that could be exploited by a skilled team operating from an unexpected position.
Shark, I need you to identify their ammunition storage and fuel supplies.
We're going to create some fireworks to keep them busy while we locate the real hostages if they exist.
Roger that. Give me 5 minutes to identify the primary targets.
Viper, find yourself a position with clear sight lines to those guard towers. I want their marksmen neutralized the moment we initiate contact.
Already identified 3 positions that will give me clean shots.
Just need to get there undetected. Ghost, you're with me. We're going to conduct a systematic search of the main buildings to locate prisoners or intelligence that explains what's really happening here. Copy. What about extraction? Sarah smiled grimly. Phoenix, I need you to contact our helicopter support and modify the extraction timeline. Tell them we'll need pickup in 30 minutes, not 60. And make sure they understand we're coming out hot. Understood. Should I explain the situation to headquarters? Negative. Radio silence except for extraction coordination. We'll debrief once we're safely back at base. The team dispersed into the compound with the silent efficiency of apex predators. Years of training and combat experience had forged them into a unified weapon capable of devastating effectiveness when properly directed. Sarah watched each man disappear into the shadows, knowing that Admiral Harrison's carefully laid trap was about to become his worst nightmare. Ghost moved ahead of Sarah like a living shadow, his reconnaissance skills allowing them to navigate between patrol routes without detection. The compound's interior was more sophisticated than the intelligence photos had suggested, with modern communication equipment and sleeping quarters that could accommodate far more personnel than a simple insurgent hideout would require. "This place is too organized," Ghost whispered as they approached the main building. "Look at the electrical systems, the plumbing, the structural modifications. Someone put serious money into building this facility." Sarah nodded, photographing everything with a silent camera for later analysis. The compound wasn't just a trap for her team. It was a permanent installation designed to house significant military operations. But who had built it, and why had Admiral Harrison directed her here? The main building's interior revealed the answer to both questions. A large map covered one wall showing strategic locations throughout Afghanistan and Pakistan, with detailed annotations in English. Communication equipment bore manufacturer labels from American defense contractors, and personnel rosters showed names and ranks of individuals from multiple NATO countries. "Jesus Christ," Ghost breathed, staring at a computer screen displaying operational plans. "This isn't an insurgent compound, it's a Black Ops facility." Sarah felt the pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. Admiral Harrison hadn't just set up a training exercise or elimination mission. He had sent her team to infiltrate an active special operations base, probably belonging to a classified unit operating outside normal command structures. The 3 American contractors were likely cover identities for special operations personnel conducting classified missions in the region. "Phoenix, this is Widow." Priority message for extraction. "We need immediate pickup, and we need it now." "Copy, Widow. What's your status?" "We're inside a friendly facility that wasn't identified in our briefing." Mission parameters have changed significantly. How long until extraction? 15 minutes for the fastest possible pickup. Can you hold that long?
We'll make it work. Widow out.
Alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the compound as Shark's explosives found their targets. Secondary explosions rocked the fuel storage area, sending towers of flame into the night sky and creating chaos among the security forces. The carefully organized defensive perimeter collapsed as personnel rushed to contain the spreading fires and assess the extent of the damage. Viper's rifle spoke 3 times in quick succession, the suppressed shots barely audible over the alarm klaxons. The marksmen in the guard tower slumped forward over their weapons, eliminating the overwatch capability that had made the compound so formidable from external approaches.
All teams, this is Widow.
Converge on Extraction Point Alpha in 10 minutes. We're leaving with more questions than answers, but we're all going home tonight.
As Sarah and Ghost made their way toward the designated extraction zone, they encountered a figure emerging from one of the administrative buildings. The man wore American military fatigues with special operations insignia, and his calm demeanor suggested he was accustomed to crisis situations.
Commander Mitchell, he called out using her name despite never having been introduced. I think we need to talk. Sarah kept her weapon trained on him while signaling Ghost to maintain Overwatch position.
You know who I am. Mind returning the favor? Colonel David Price, Special Activities Division.
And before you ask, yes, I know exactly why you're here and who sent you.
Enlighten me! Colonel Price gestured toward a burning fuel depot where security personnel were fighting desperately to prevent the flames from reaching additional storage tanks.
Admiral Harrison told me you were conducting a training exercise tonight. Said your team needed to be tested against a realistic opposition force to validate your combat readiness. And you believed him?
I had my doubts, especially when he insisted on radio silence and modified rules of engagement. But Harrison outranks me, and the exercise parameters seemed reasonable for advanced SEAL training.
Sarah lowered her weapon slightly, recognizing the ring of truth in the colonel's explanation.
What exactly were you told about tonight's exercise? That your team would attempt to infiltrate our training facility and extract mock hostages from the main building.
We were instructed to provide realistic resistance without using lethal force, but to treat the exercise as if it were an actual combat situation. The full scope of Admiral Harrison's plan was becoming clear. He had arranged for Sarah's team to conduct what they believed was a real hostage rescue, while the defending forces treated it as a training exercise with non-lethal objectives. The potential for catastrophic misunderstanding was enormous, and only luck had prevented the situation from escalating into a genuine firefight between friendly forces. Colonel, I need you to understand something very important. My team was briefed that this was a live combat mission with American lives at stake. We were told insurgents were holding 3 contractors hostage and planning to execute them.
Admiral Harrison told us nothing about training exercises or Special Activities Division personnel.
Colonel Price's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. That's impossible. Harrison specifically emphasized that this was a training evolution designed to test your unit's capabilities under realistic conditions. Does your facility currently house any American contractors or civilian personnel who might be classified as hostages? Negative. We have 12 special operations personnel assigned to this station, all armed and briefed on tonight's exercise parameters.
The implications were staggering. Admiral Harrison had deliberately created a scenario where elite American forces would engage each other under false pretenses, believing they were fighting actual enemies.
If the situation had developed according to his expectations, both sides would have fought with maximum intensity, resulting in significant casualties among some of America's finest warriors.
Colonel, I strongly recommend you contact your superiors immediately and report what's happened here tonight.
Admiral Harrison has committed serious violations of military law, and this entire situation needs to be investigated at the highest levels. And Commander, for what it's worth, your team's performance tonight was extraordinary. The infiltration route you used was completely unexpected, and your tactical coordination under pressure was flawless. The sound of approaching helicopters filled the night air as Sarah's extraction team arrived ahead of schedule. Flares marked the landing zone while her team members converged from their various positions throughout the compound, each man having successfully completed his assigned tasks despite the mission's unexpected complications.
All teams sound off, Sarah commanded as they reached the extraction point.
Brick, operational. Ghost, operational. Doc, operational. Shark, operational. Fireworks complete as requested. Phoenix, operational. Extraction on final approach. Viper, operational. 3 targets neutralized with non-lethal rounds. Sarah felt the familiar surge of pride that came from leading professionals who consistently exceeded expectations under impossible circumstances. They had walked into Admiral Harrison's trap, recognized it for what it was, and turned the situation to their advantage without causing unnecessary casualties or compromising their mission objectives. As the helicopter settled onto the improvised landing zone, Colonel Price approached Sarah one final time.
Commander, I'll be filing a full report on tonight's events. Admiral Harrison's actions endangered the lives of personnel from multiple units and violated numerous regulations regarding joint training exercises.
Thank you, Colonel. I'll be filing my own report as soon as we return to base. Tonight's events need to be thoroughly investigated. Sarah's team boarded the helicopter in perfect sequence, their equipment secured and weapons safed according to standard procedures. As the aircraft lifted off into the Afghan night, Sarah looked back at the burning compound and felt a grim satisfaction. Admiral Harrison had intended tonight to be the end of her career, and possibly her life. Instead, it was going to be the beginning of his downfall. The helicopter ride back to Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters was conducted in complete radio silence, with Sarah's team using hand signals and written notes to communicate about the night's events.
Each man understood the gravity of what they had discovered and the potential consequences for Admiral Harrison's career.
But more importantly, they recognized that their commander had successfully navigated an impossible situation without losing a single team member. As the aircraft approached the base, Sarah could see a convoy of vehicles with flashing lights gathered near the command building. Word of the night's events had clearly reached higher levels of the military hierarchy, and she suspected Admiral Harrison was about to face questions from officials who significantly outranked him. The helicopter settled onto the landing pad with its characteristic whump of rotor blades, and Sarah's team disembarked in perfect formation despite their exhaustion.
At that time scale says the courts were at 3 times time, though, what's so bad?
They had been awake for over 20 hours and had just completed one of the most complex operations of their careers, but their discipline remained absolute.
Brick, take the team to debrief and equipment maintenance.
I'll handle the initial after-action report with command staff.
Roger that, Commander. What should we tell them if they ask for details before you arrive?
Standard protocol. Operational security until I clear the mission for discussion. As her team headed toward the equipment bay, Sarah walked toward the command building where a very different scene was unfolding. Through the tall windows, she could see Admiral Harrison standing at attention before a panel of senior officers, his usually confident demeanor replaced by obvious distress. Among the assembled officials, Park gestured toward a small conference room away from the main proceedings.
Commander Mitchell, Admiral Reynolds would like to speak with you privately before the formal debriefer.
She's reviewed Colonel Price's initial report and has some specific questions about tonight's mission.
Of course. Is Admiral Harrison aware that I've returned? He's currently providing his version of events to the investigating panel. From what I understand, his account differs significantly from Colonel Price's report.
Sarah followed Commander Park to the conference room where Admiral Reynolds was reviewing a thick folder of documents. At 55, Reynolds was a formidable presence whose reputation for fairness and integrity was legendary throughout the Navy.
Her silver hair was pulled back in a precise bun, and her blue eyes missed nothing as Sarah entered and stood at attention.
At ease, Commander.
Please, have a seat. We have a lot to discuss, and I want you to understand that you're not under investigation for tonight's events. Sarah sat across from the Admiral, grateful for the clarification but still maintaining her professional composure. Thank you, ma'am. I understand there are questions about our mission parameters and execution. That's putting it mildly.
Admiral Reynolds opened the folder and pulled out several photographs taken at Colonel Price's facility. Before we begin, I want you to know that Colonel Price spoke very highly of your team's performance.
He was particularly impressed with your tactical innovation and restraint under extremely challenging circumstances.
Colonel Price is a professional, ma'am.
His people handled a very confusing situation with exceptional discipline.
Yes, they did.
Which makes Admiral Harrison's version of events even more troubling. Reynolds leaned forward, her expression serious.
Commander, I need you to tell me exactly what you were briefed about tonight's mission. Don't leave out any details, no matter how minor they might seem.
Sarah recounted the entire sequence of events, from Admiral Harrison's initial briefing to the discovery that they had infiltrated a friendly facility. She described the intelligence photos, the compressed timeline, and Harrison's attitude throughout the pre-mission planning. Most importantly, she detailed the moment when she realized the entire operation was based on false information. At no point were you told this was a training exercise?
No, ma'am.
Admiral Harrison specifically described it as a live hostage rescue mission with American lives at stake. He emphasized the time-critical nature of the situation and the consequences of mission failure. Admiral Reynolds made notes as Sarah spoke, occasionally asking for clarification about specific details. Her questions focused on Harrison's demeanor and the exact wording he had used when describing the mission parameters. Commander, in your professional opinion, was Admiral Harrison aware that he was sending you into a friendly facility?
Sarah considered the question carefully before responding. Based on his behavior during the briefing and his specific comments about my call sign, I believe he knew exactly what he was doing.
The mission felt like a setup from the beginning, but I couldn't identify the specific nature of the trap until we were already on the ground.
Explain what you mean about your call sign. Admiral Harrison made several disparaging comments about the Iron Widow designation, suggesting it was pretentious or inappropriate for a naval officer.
His attitude suggested he was looking for an opportunity to prove that I wasn't qualified for Special Operations Command. Admiral Reynolds nodded grimly. That's consistent with other information we've received. Commander, I want you to understand that Admiral Harrison's actions tonight represent a serious breach of military conduct. He deliberately placed two elite units in a position where they could have engaged each other with lethal force, all based on false information.
Ma'am, what happens next? Admiral Harrison will face a formal investigation and likely court-martial proceedings.
His actions endangered the lives of multiple service members and violated numerous regulations regarding joint training exercises and operational security.
Admiral Reynolds closed the folder and looked directly at Sarah.
But I want to discuss something else with you, Commander. Tonight's events have brought your capabilities to the attention of some very senior officials. Your team's performance under impossible circumstances was extraordinary, and several people are asking why you're not being utilized at higher levels of command. Sarah felt a surge of unexpected emotion. After years of fighting for recognition and respect, someone in authority was finally acknowledging what she and her team were capable of achieving. Ma'am, I appreciate the recognition. My team is exceptional, and they deserve credit for tonight's success. Your team follows your leadership, Commander. And your leadership tonight was exactly what we need in special operations. Which brings me to the real reason I wanted to speak with you privately.
Admiral Reynolds pulled another document from her briefcase, this one bearing official Navy letterhead with multiple classification markings.
How would you feel about commanding a joint task force responsible for high-risk operations in multiple theaters of operation? The offer was everything Sarah had dreamed of achieving throughout her military career. Command of a joint task force would position her among the elite leadership of American special operations, with responsibility for missions that could affect national security at the highest levels.
Ma'am, I would be honored to accept such a position. What would be the scope of operations? Classified, for now.
But I can tell you that it would involve working with the absolute best personnel from all branches of service, conducting operations that most people will never know happened. The position requires someone with proven combat leadership, tactical innovation, and the ability to perform under extreme pressure.
When would this assignment begin?
Immediately. Tonight's events have accelerated several ongoing discussions about restructuring our special operations capabilities.
We need commanders who can adapt to unexpected situations and still achieve mission success. Admiral Reynolds stood and extended her hand.
Congratulations, Colonel Mitchell.
Your promotion is effective immediately, along with your new assignment. Sarah shook the Admiral's hand, still processing the rapid transformation of her career prospects. In a single evening, she had gone from fighting for basic recognition to receiving promotion and command of an elite task force.
Thank you, ma'am. I won't disappoint you. I know you won't.
And Colonel, your call sign is perfect. The Iron Widow represents exactly the kind of leader we need for the challenges ahead.
As they left the conference room, Sarah could see Admiral Harrison being escorted from the building by military police. His career was effectively over, destroyed by his own arrogance and willingness to endanger American lives to settle a personal grudge.
He had attempted to eliminate the Iron Widow, and instead had provided her with the platform to demonstrate why that call sign was so appropriate. Sarah's team was waiting in the equipment bay, conducting post-mission maintenance with their characteristic attention to detail. When they saw her approaching with the additional rank insignia of a full colonel, their faces broke into the first smiles she had seen all night.
Brick, gather the team.
We need to discuss our new assignment. New assignment, ma'am? Joint Task Force Command, effective immediately. We're moving up in the world, gentlemen. Ghost looked up from cleaning his weapon.
Does this mean we're done with admirals who think women don't belong in special operations? Sarah smiled grimly.
I think Admiral Harrison's opinion on that subject is no longer relevant to anyone's career prospects. As her team gathered around for the briefing on their new mission, Sarah reflected on the events of the past 24 hours. Admiral Harrison had intended to end her career by proving she was unfit for command.
Instead, his elaborate trap had provided the perfect demonstration of why the Iron Widow had earned her reputation. She had walked into an impossible situation, adapted to changing circumstances, protected her team from unnecessary casualties, and completed her mission objectives despite operating on false information. More importantly, she had done it all while maintaining the highest standards of military professionalism and tactical excellence. The call sign Iron Widow had never been about personal relationships or dramatic affectation. It represented unwavering determination in the face of adversity.
the ability to emerge stronger from situations that would destroy others, and the deadly effectiveness that came from combining tactical skill with absolute commitment to mission success. Admiral Harrison had finally learned what that call sign really meant, but the lesson had cost him everything he had spent 30 years building.
Meanwhile, Colonel Sarah Mitchell was just getting started. Her team deserved to know that their loyalty and professionalism had been recognized at the highest levels of military command.
More importantly, they deserved to know that they would continue working together on missions that truly mattered to national security.
Gentlemen, she began as they gathered around, tonight we proved something important about our capabilities under pressure.
Tomorrow, we start proving it on an even larger stage. The Iron Widow had survived Admiral Harrison's trap and emerged stronger than ever.
Now it was time to show the world what she and her team could really accomplish when given missions worthy of their skills. Outside, the first light of dawn was beginning to appear on the horizon, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another.
Sarah Mitchell had earned her place among America's elite military commanders, and she had done it by being exactly who she had always been, the Iron Widow, bringing everyone home safely while completing missions others thought impossible. Admiral Harrison's joke had backfired spectacularly, leaving him staggering in shock while the woman he had tried to destroy rose to heights he could never achieve.
The Iron Widow had proven that some call signs were earned through excellence, not given through mockery.